Do you know that I jumped in and got involved? I think it's actually 2 years ago.
I know. That's
Probably
why I wanted
within a couple of weeks of today.
I wanted to have this conversation a year ago because at that point it was about a year into this.
Okay.
When this whole thing started. So let's rewind. I'm coming back from dinner in New York City, dinner with Gary Vee. Gary says, dude, you're a creative guy. You need an operations person. You've got a bunch of people you know that can help you.
It's funny how he knows that, right? He knows that because intuitively, like everybody has who they need in their group of people that they know. They just don't ever like tap them in.
Well, think about it though. Had he not said that, I wouldn't have even thought, oh, I should reach out to Brandon, right? Because it's just not something that, it's not in the back of my mind going, I don't think of you that way, right? I don't think of Brandon and go, oh, Brandon's the perfect guy to be my operational guy.
Thanks.
But no, but it wasn't meant as an insult. I see you differently. There's a relationship. I've known you for lots of years. Our history predates this. It predates your other business, right? So
right.
So I think of you more as Brandon, a friend. Brandon, someone who I've known for 20 years.
Yeah, maybe it's 20 years, something like that, yeah.
And so it wasn't a thought. It wasn't because I didn't think of you that way. It was just I wouldn't have connected those dots.
Okay.
So anyway, have this dinner, come back, and you're on my short list, but you were the person on my top of my short list.
I'm your number one.
You were my number one, but I had backups in case you said no. And
okay.
And
I'm
so,
okay with that.
So we went to lunch. We had street tacos and margaritas.
I remember. In Old Town Gilbert.
That's right, downtown, Old Town, they call it. And I kind of shared with you the game plan. Now, for me, you and I had already talked about, you were helping me with some things as a friend, going, hey, here's what I would do, here's what I would look at. And I know that when I sat down with you for lunch that day, it was kind of like, I wasn't even thinking about this. You were trying to figure out who you could connect me with to help me.
Yeah, I was kind of caught off guard. There was two things I remember. I was caught off guard that you were asking me to be a part of this in a very different way than I had expected.
Right.
Number one. But number two, you told me several times what it was the business did. And even after you told me, I had absolutely no idea what that actually meant. And I think I tried to tell you that, but you sort of did what you sometimes do, which is hear what I said, but kind of gloss over it. And so you just told me again in the same exact way. And so I left there going, he wants me to be a part of something. I don't really even know what that is. I mean, I know what he wants me to do, but I don't know what the business does. And it took me, honestly, it took me a good month to really understand.
That's funny.
The business that Ad Zombies is. And I already said yes. So that's the crazy thing.
What was funny to me is that I remember distinctly, and you said this, and I can almost quote you. You said, okay, so explain to me again how a business makes money selling $49 ads.
People pay you to just give them words. And the number of words oftentimes is very, very little. But what I also learned, my brain I'm a left brain kind of guy, right? And my brain thought that the less words you're supplying someone, the less they pay. But it actually turns out, now that I've learned about what the business is and does, and it's only taken me 2 years to get here, probably less than that. Oftentimes, the harder things for writers to write are the shorter, less words things. And so the dollars people pay have little to do with the quantity of things they get back or the time and effort involved. And there's sometimes there's a tremendous amount of time to understand, just like I didn't understand what Ad Zombies does. The writers have to understand who the client is, who their target customers are, the voice of their brand. There's a bunch of things that happen long before they ever make a single keystroke. That's a bunch of time. And ultimately people are paying for time, right?
Right.
That's the commodity that we trade in. And so.
But when you came in, so I painted a picture, and I think I painted a pretty decent picture of how things were organized or disorganized when you first.
The thing I remember the most is you had a big emphasis that you went over several times, which was this: we have to do X, Y, and Z before we even start. And none of those things had to do with researching the client. They were all like checking tasks off a list.
Right.
It was an order came in. Has this order been paid for? Like, has the money actually gone to a Stripe or a PayPal account or whatever? Right. And if so, the client, what would tell you to start working first was somebody filled out a brief. But you have this brief now. Can you match it up with an order that was made, right? That matches the brief. So it's a brief for a product X. Did they buy a product X? And did we get paid for product X? Right. So it was in my brain like, that's your big problem to solve? I probably got you in like day 3 on that, right? It turns out there was a lot bigger problems to solve, but there was a lot of emphasis on these 3 things.
Well, and part of it is because I was trying to be the operational guy,
right?
Which I am just not wired to do.
Yeah, I remember a Google sheet that actually I've saved.
I feel like do you see how red I'm getting?
Yeah.
Admitting this is so difficult for me because looking back at it now, it was funny.
But the part that you're good at is the part that I'm horrible at. Like, I'm the least creative guy we both know combined, right?
No, I think you're very creative in what you do.
Sure, but not in a way that most people would consider creative, right? So, yeah. So I've got from day 1 when I said yes, and then the next day I think you made me an email address and shared with me the various Google Sheets that you were using to keep track of things, and you had a color coding system for emails where
I did.
I don't even remember what colors meant what. But,
I can tell you.
But I have almost all of that stuff. It might be kind of fun. I wonder if we can insert that into this in some way. I don't. Maybe it doesn't make sense. I don't know. But I do remember the Google Sheet.
Yeah. So green was payments because green was money.
Okay.
Yellow was order placed, and then there was one other color. It was green, yellow, and red. I forget. It's been so long, and it's been literally tens of thousands of orders ago. So I can't. Now I'm like looking back at that. I'm like, how the hell did we survive? But it was so it started in the first few months. It was pretty easy because it was a system that I created for my broken right brain.
Right. Let me just take some of the heavy lifting of people having to reconcile all this stuff, and let me make that so that you just focus on writing. And then really quickly I said, okay, we got to get you out of, you should never be writing anymore.
Right.
We need to get you out of a space where you can actually run the business.
But that was hard for me to to walk to be able to go. Wait a second, but I'm a writer. I'm a good writer. I don't want to not write. But I also understood that one of the reasons that you were the top pick was that you have already built and scaled an operation to massive success. And I'm like, okay, you learn from people who've done things that you are not good at, and you surround yourself with people that are good at the things you suck at.
Sure.
Well, you're good at those things, and I suck at those things, and I'm not going to pretend to ever for me to spend any time trying to be better at them.
Right.
It's a waste.
So I like the things that I'm not good at. I often say I could spend 20 hours a week every week for 10 years, and I would get 2% better at the things I'm not good at.
Right.
Or I could go find somebody who's really good at those things already and equip them with tools and a process and let them run, and they'll be better than I'll ever be.
Yeah, and that's, for me, that was a big thing. Like getting, when you first stepped in, and it was interesting because you came in, I had already signed a development deal with Red Cliff Labs to build out the back end of Podio, which our system is built on, our ad system, which is advertising delivery system.
Thanks for telling me. I forgot.
I know.
Just kidding.
I'm telling them.
Oh, I thought we were supposed to pretend like they're not even here.
Well, no, but someone's going to see or hear or watch at some point.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not. All 2 people. But
Thanks, Mom.
I had already contracted them, and you on day 2 were like, I got this. And you jumped in on the development call and started just running things because it was so out of my comfort zone, and he was asking questions.
He was asking you to make decisions on how a process should be, and I'm like, this is kind of my wheelhouse. Let me just jump in here.
Yeah. And so that took over. But let's go back to I was color coding things.
Yeah.
When you came in, we at that point had done a few thousand ads. We were not. We were still in the early stages of Ad Zombies. The company started March 6, 2017.
And this is like October, I want to say.
Yeah, end of October, right around the beginning of November of that same year. And so there was no operational scale. But you walked in and you took over and you inherited, even though it was a brief time, a mess.
Yeah, it wasn't as messy as I thought it was going to be. So I was expecting a bigger mess. It wasn't that bad.
Okay, so what?
And we had a basic process in place within about a month and a half, right, to take the chaos and de-chaosify it.
Absolutely. When you look at that, how do you where do you begin? Because I looked at that and I said, okay, I'm going to give this to Brandon. He's going to take this thing over and make it better. And in my head, I'm thinking, how the hell does he make it better? Because I don't know how to make it better. Where do you start with that? Because it was
me personally. Where do we start?
Yeah, because to me, when I look at it, it looks like spaghetti.
Yeah. So for me, this is my only thing I'm good at is taking something that has a million parts and that can be complicated and that has a bunch to wrangle, right? And figure out how to break it into the smallest little bite-sized pieces and then tackle those pieces. And so, I generally kind of try to step back and look at, okay, at the end of the day, what are we kind of fundamentally trying to accomplish? And you'll hear me ask that question all the time. If somebody says, let's change this thing, I don't ever say, how do you want to I always say, when we're done changing it, what do you expect that outcome to be? Right?
That's a go-to Brandonism in our leadership meetings is, what are you trying to accomplish by changing this? Help me understand that. Because I know oftentimes I've learned, and I've gotten better, I think, over the last couple of years, I don't try to engineer the process anymore. I know we have a couple of people on our team. Megan's one that she likes to try to engineer, and we're working on that.
Yeah, that's a normal human thing.
Right.
I get it.
Don't engineer the process. Just tell Brandon what the end result is that we're trying to accomplish, and then let him do the engineering side of it.
I find myself doing that with lots of people. That's my go-to, is because I think people sometimes get caught up in, they think I want to affect some kind of change, right? And then they set off on a course to do that, but quickly lose sight of the reason that they started in the first place. And then what happens when you don't really clearly identify what we're trying to accomplish is that you end up getting somewhere, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem you set out to solve, and sometimes doesn't solve any problem. Just creates a different way of doing something, or creates 3 new problems and fixes 1. So I try to keep that sort of in the back of my mind. So that's sort of step 1 for me, is really trying to understand, what are we trying to do, right? And then I look at, okay, let's assume it's never going to be able to solve 100% of the problems. Let's try to go for 80%, right? Let's get a version 1 working and not worry about it being perfect. Let's worry about it being a version 1.
Right.
And so then it's, what's the most complicated, time-consuming thing that I feel like is one of the easier things that we can solve, and let's get that knocked out. And that's going to do 2 things. 1, it's going to knock out a piece of the complication, but 2, it's going to give us some momentum.
Right. Because
momentum, I found, is important for me and for a lot of people, is being able to see the result of something you've done fuels you to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
It goes back to the thing that I learned from Jeff Bezos about being a day one company, right? You always want to have momentum. You always want to be in a forward progression, right. And you want to make quick decisions and
course correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Because and I had this conversation earlier with MJ, who was sitting exactly where you were sitting while I was working at my desk, and we were talking about this, and I said, there's no one thing that you can do that's going to destroy the company. Like, you can make a mistake, and it's okay to make a mistake. And whereas,
but doing nothing can destroy it.
Right, but doing nothing can, right? Because then you become complacent, and the thing falls apart. And so for me, I knew that, like, every time something changes for the better, I feel that, right? I internalize that, so it helps fuel me along. Mm-hmm. But I also know that as we grow, the things that fire me up, that motivate me, aren't necessarily, like, I'm not motivated by, oh, we've made this much money as a business, or we've accomplished this milestone in terms of reach. I get excited when we put out a new ad that gets a lot of engagement.
I saw a new ad this morning that I hadn't seen, and it's rare that I see one of our ads having not already sort of previewed it at some point. It was the dog with the tail.
Oh, we make wieners wag.
Yes.
And
Yes.
a wiener dog.
Yes.
And
Very funny.
thank you.
And it pushes the envelope of what it does, I think, beyond getting attention. It shows clients that we know how to get things that might not necessarily look like they should be approved. We know how to write very carefully sometimes, because there's not all of our clients, in fact, not most of our clients, but some of our clients have products and services that they're promoting that, if they're not promoted in the right way, aren't going to pass terms of service. They're going to violate policy. They're not going to be able to run.
Right.
And oftentimes we have very creative ways of looking at things and being able to make that happen while still painting inside the lines, right?
And I can tell you the secret to that.
Wine. Okay.
No. For me, I like to push the envelope and push the edge a little bit. I know that some of our team tends to stay a little more conservative. It really depends on the product or service that we're writing for that will dictate how much, and of course what the client writes in the brief. That brief is so critical to that. So I look at it as you inherited a mess. You were like, no, this is pretty normal.
Yeah.
And you just started systemizing things and creating the processes that make this thing work. What was like your biggest surprise aha over the course of, and I know that we've not planned for this. I didn't sit down and go, here's our list of conversational questions for this sit down, but like are there a few things that have surprised you along the way, or that have kind of caught you off guard that you go, oh wow, I didn't think about that?
There's a bunch of things that sort of fit into that category. So one of the things that I'm still kind of surprised about is we offer a bunch of different types of writing services, and it's rare that we find somebody that's asking for something that we don't already have on the menu. But there's one product that sells more than pretty much everything else combined, and it's still kind of surprising to me that one product stands out that much, right? It's an odd thing to me that there's a single SKU that it sells more than everything else combined, probably, and multiple times of that, right?
And it's the F word.
Yes.
Facebook ads.
Correct. Don't know why that surprises me, but I expected that there would be a more sort of even amount of, first of all, other platforms, but email sequences and landing page copy and web page copy and letters and that kind of stuff, right?
Google ads, LinkedIn ads. I mean, they're just everywhere.
We even do some weird, like, niche-y things, like with Amazon and they used to call it enhanced brand content. They should call it something else now. They changed their name.
Right.
Whatever that is. And a few other things that they're niche-y, and I get that those wouldn't be as popular. Short-term rental listings, right? Your Airbnb stuff, right? But yeah, it's a little strange to me. That's probably not what you're looking for as far as
but I think Facebook, and that's a good conversation to have. I think Facebook today dominates because that landscape is so, and I don't want to say oversaturated, but it is heavily populated with people who have taken online marketing courses, who are now agencies.
They're driving results for businesses.
Correct. And so that tends to be the platform of the day, of the moment, and that will shift over time as new platforms emerge, as TikTok gains popularity, as somebody figures out something they can do with Google ads or YouTube ads. Suddenly the love of a platform will adjust, and as it adjusts, we'll adjust with it because we're already doing it for those platforms.
Right. We haven't had anybody interested in us writing for TikTok yet, but the product is what we would call a video script, right? We already have that as a product. We call it Instagram stories. We call it YouTube video ads. We call it video script. We call it captioning. We call it a bunch of things, but it's all the same thing, right?
Well, and it's funny to me that we have to call it these different things because people call them those different things.
That's I get that.
But if you go into like a McDonald's, a quarter pounder with cheese is a quarter pounder with cheese everywhere you go. But
you could argue that a burger is a burger, and they have a quarter pound with cheese and
they have a cheeseburger, and they have you're absolutely right. And I was gonna go there. You followed it up perfectly. So we just have the various varieties of those flavors available in the way people call them. What else has been like one of those? Wow, that's threw me or.
So I also early on I think part of it goes back to at that lunch, maybe it was late lunch, whatever it was, tacos and margaritas, where I couldn't wrap my head around that you could actually have a real business off of $49 ads, right? I also had presupposed that there was like a ceiling to the business where, it'll be something maybe interesting, but I didn't imagine it could grow to the scale it's grown to. And even when we got to we had set this big lofty goal of a monthly amount, that translated into an annual amount that was a 7-figure thing, right? That seemed like that's a really big stretch. And now that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, right? Like that's
right. Well, looking back, like it's funny. The other day I was in one of our accounts, Stripe or PayPal, and I was like, wow, we've processed a lot of money through this account. And I was a little shocked. But at the same time, I realized that this is a service that is desperately needed for anyone in really any business. Now, I would say, I used to say marketing, right, because we focused on marketing, but that's really not what we focus on. We help every business, if they need words for their business, whatever that business is, funeral home, financial planner, everyone needs words, whether it's a landing page, an email, we write them.
That's the other crazy thing is that so as much as we've grown, there's still way more people that have no idea that they need what we do than there are people who have grasped that. And so there's still so much more potential there.
It's funny.
I thought this was way more niche-y than it turns out that it probably is.
Yeah, and it's way broader than I think you thought. You thought it was like, okay, you've got this very, very tight vertical. And
part of it was the name. I mean, Ad Zombies implies that we create ads, and other than Facebook, where else then? And even today, there's not a ton of ads on other platforms in that traditional copy-first sense, right?
Right.
So it's where the name doesn't do us probably all the favors it could, but it's also not the worst thing ever. So,
No, and everybody likes our zombies.
Yeah.
And they know our zombies, and we have a brand that has been built now. It's funny, I was looking at our total sidetrack. I was looking at our Facebook account the other day, which, as we know lately, has been troublesome.
Sometimes easy to look at and sometimes a little more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. We've had 5 shutdowns in 5 weeks from Facebook, and it's just because of an algorithm issue, but we think we know what's causing it. I'm talking to Facebook's global marketing team and finally getting some answers, and hopefully they can fix the problem. Not violating copy problems. Something in their algorithm is being triggered by some of our ads, which has never caused a trigger before. So they're fixing that. But when I look at the Facebook pixel data and realize that we've had 24 million events, that blows my mind.
There are people that have come in contact with the brand because of or attached to Facebook in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
And so 24 million pixel events. And when we look at the total revenue, I think Facebook only makes up 4% of our total revenue, if I remember correctly from the last time.
Right, as far as that's where we spend a big chunk of ad budget, right? But I think a lot of people learn about who we are, what we do there, and then at some point down the road need us and come in through a different source. So it probably doesn't get all the attribution credit it deserves, but
right. But beyond 28 days, Facebook doesn't. Right. They don't get the love.
Trust me, I understand that. My other business is a traditional brick and mortar kind of thing, and it's a much like a dentist where you don't need us until you need us, and so the 28-day window is not even close to long enough.
Right.
So anything I've tried to do, I have to just sort of feel like Facebook might be doing something for me because there's no way to measure that in their world because of the way they work, and that's not a bad on them. It's just a fact of that other business. So
right, yeah. No, the other business is definitely a need-based, oh my God. It's like, you don't think about a plumber until you have a toilet backing up and your toilet is full and your bathtub is full. Oh my God, help.
And the guys spending ad budget are hoping you remember their jingle. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, pretty much. If looking at it today, things are systemized and we have processes that work. What if looking at our processes now, what would you change or what would you fix if you could re-engineer any of what we have?
I have many times. So probably you don't even know this, but there's changes to the stable platform and systems that we have. There's changes to that constantly.
Okay.
There was changes made last night. There were changes made this morning. There's always I look at systems and process as it's never finished, right?
Okay.
It's
beta.
It's just version. No, it's not beta, but is Apple ever done with releasing updates to operating systems?
No.
Because there's improvements, there's fixes, there's tweaks, there's enhancements, there's new features, there's always, and for me, I look at systems and processes the same way. You can fix things to death. You can, one of my favorite sayings is if it ain't broke, fix it till it is, right? That's easy to do, but if you pay attention, there's almost always places where you can make something better, easier, have checks and balances, improve the experience, make it more consistent, in some way, shape, or form, make improvement. And so I've always got a laundry list of things that are someday when I get time, I'm going to. And lately, there's been a lot less new implementation and fixing of problems. And so some of those laundry list items are trying to get tackled.
So what things am I not seeing that I should?
Things that hopefully you'll never see.
Okay.
If you don't notice, that's a good thing, right?
Okay.
I believe that my job, right, is to empower the people on the team, to be able to do their job with the least amount of effort possible so that they can focus all their time and effort on delivering awesome copy. And the more they're having to think about the steps it takes to get there and the process and the procedure, the more work I have to do to make those things go away. Because ultimately, our writers are creatives. And I don't want them thinking about process. I want them thinking about creative.
Right. We want them being creative, living in the space that they do their best work in.
Everything I can take off their plates that is outside of that creative realm, within reason, I want to do that. I want to make the stuff that they need to be focused on appear in front of them and come to them, and make it really simple with what should I be doing next? What's important right now? And if I can create something that has them always knowing, I just finished this, what's important now, right? Answer that question. What's important now? What's important now? WIN, the acronym, right? If that's obvious, then things are working right.
So about a year and a half ago, I was in the middle of writing my first book.
Okay.
We had something happen, or you had a life event occur up in Idaho.
Oh, yeah.
And
for my side passion.
Yes. And I freaked out because we were just getting ready to go on summer vacation. Family was going to California, and I got a phone call and that you were in a hospital at a level 1 trauma center. And I'm like, what?
It's on the 4th of July. I recall very well.
Yeah.
Well, at the time.
At the time.
Yeah.
You didn't recall much at the time. And so what happened was you were in a car accident.
Yep.
You were taken to a level 1 trauma center, and
then to a second one.
That was oh yeah. First you were taken to a smaller hospital, and then they were like, no, trauma center.
Yeah.
And you were moved to a trauma center. Airlifted or driven? Or
No, just driven through an ambulance. Yeah.
And
very uncomfortable ambulance, right?
Well, can imagine. How do you even remember any of that?
I had broken ribs and a punctured lung, and
you were a mess,
and things bleeding, and it was not fun.
And so we went to California, and I'm like, oh my gosh, honey, I'm not on vacation. I've got to be operations again, which is terrible for me. It's terrible.
But it's better than nothing.
Right. But I realized that, oh my gosh, we've got to have like redundancies and manuals, and like, because and you document things as you do it, but we didn't have
not to the extent that it needed to be, because I was in a run fast and
break things mode.
Yeah, let's try to get it. But probably, hopefully, what you also recognized is that being in that, what I like to call the quarterback seat, right, was probably substantially easier than it had been prior, even though we were doing probably 10 times the volume at that point. So there was enough tools and things in place to make that manageable, even for a guy who maybe it isn't your go-to talent.
Not even close.
So that's the other thing I try to make sure is that there are guys who are the magic button makers, the tool builders, the system drivers, right, that fall in love with themselves and try to make it something that requires them to be a part of. And they do that for job security. They do that for a lot of reasons. I try to do the opposite. When the thing's working properly, it shouldn't require me. And it should be able to be operated by just about anybody. And it should be able to, something happens to me, you should be able to find somebody that can look at what's there and decode the mess and figure out, okay, here's how this is working. I can fix that or change that or tweak that. And so part of strategically why we jumped on that platform and embraced it, the Podio platform, is it has a huge developer network. You have a relationship with somebody. If something happened to me and I was gone tomorrow, there's other people that can reverse engineer what I've done.
That would be really sad.
Yeah, but the business will go on, right? There's people that can pick that ball up and run with it, and so but it's not some weird thing.
It hit me at that moment, though, how critical a good operations person is, because when things like that happen, you go, oh my God, how does the business function, right? Because you had built all of these systems and processes and made them work, and I'm sitting here going, I don't know how any of this stuff works. And I felt a little bit lost at that moment. It was It was a little scary because we have a better infrastructure today.
Right. Today we've got more people in place that are just operationally focused. We've got everything really well documented.
Right. There's no, everybody knows how everything works.
Right.
Everybody who needs to know.
Yeah.
The writers don't need. But the operational side, yes, people who need to know stuff. And it's even weird to me that right now one of them is on vacation. And
aren't two of them on vacation?
Two of them are on vacation.
Right.
And
it's okay.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard, because I'm a control freak.
Right.
It's real, I have a hard time letting go of stuff like that. But
we got half dozen people that are well equipped to handle most anything that comes up, and
I've gotten way better.
So we're good.
I've gotten way better at just breathing and just letting people do what they do. And it was interesting. I think it was last week. It was some night last week. You and I were texting, and you were like, "Hey, got a minute? Jump on a call." And it felt like we hadn't talked in a couple of weeks, which is not accurate, but it was just that things were running smoothly. Right. And so we didn't have there wasn't a need for this constant communication every day of hey, we need to do this, we need to do that. And
I think we had both been traveling a bunch, and so our sort of standing weekly meeting didn't happen for several weeks in a row, and we'd had a couple of chatty kind of conversations, but nothing that was like a quality, let's spend some time talking about where things are at. And
right.
So,
but it's nice when things are running smoothly, because you can actually step back and get a big picture look and say, okay, what do we need to bolster up? What do we need to work on next?
Right. Or is there something new we can go play with?
Right.
I like to go and do new things, right?
Right.
So
we want to exercise our brains a little bit in other spaces. So, and that's what we're able to do now. So, I'm just really grateful that Gary had the insight to say, hey, you need to find this person, and you already know who this person is. I'm grateful that you said yes when we had lunch.
The funny thing about Gary is, oftentimes he's a guy that has a lot more wisdom than you expect at first glance, right? But oftentimes he's telling you something that you sort of inherently already know, and he's got a unique way to empower you to feel like you have permission to do this thing that you sort of know you should be doing anyway. Right.
Well, you've now met him a couple of times, so you I think at first you were like, why are you paying attention to this guy?
I was aware of him only because, so in my other business, Ken, my other business partner, had brought him up years ago when he was doing in the early days with the it was before Empathy, but it was
Wine Library.
Wine Library, and was trying to figure out the secret sauce of Gary and how he got all these followers and how he was not just getting followers, because at the end of the day, that's not important. It's what you do with that, right? He was using social to drive business. And Ken, his big focus in everything he does is trying to figure out how to get attention and eyeballs on the business. And so he was trying to reverse engineer what Gary was doing to figure out how do I do some of that, right? So I knew who Gary was through that context. Obviously, understand a lot more about who he is now. But I knew of him, but in a different. I didn't understand that he had done all the things that he's done to this point now.
Yeah, he's an incredibly insightful guy, a very smart guy, and I know the first couple of times you're like, you're listening to this guy who has no connection to the business, but I think now you get an idea of who he is and why I listen to him. He's built an incredible business, and he knows what the hell he's doing. And
regardless of all that, if you get something out of it and it helps you feel empowered to jumpstart shit and get moving, then
Right.
where's the harm in that? So,
And or spark the next idea, right? You know, you and I had been talking for a while about doing some other things that come off of this. You know, one of the things that has naturally come from the development of ad zombies is a lot of businesses are like, hey, how did you grow your business so fast, and how did you do this, and could I pick your brain on this? And so
Right.
suddenly an offshoot of that is consulting, and so we're talking with companies of different sizes and scales all over the country that are having us work with them. And so it's interesting how one business, which started by accident in a spare bedroom in my house, has grown to what it is. And I'm just glad you're part of it because it's fun.
I'm glad to be here. It is fun. Having a good time.
Anyway, and I'm sorry you didn't drink with me today because I have plenty of wine.
I had lunch before I came here, and
Fine,
so I'm full, and
Be that way.
maybe next time.
What anything you want to see for us for 2020, or like what if you're looking into the future, what do you want to see us do, change, grow, and evolve into?
Now you put me on the spot. See,
Damn right.
This is the area that I'm not strong in. Is that forward looking? I'm more focused on what can I do to make the things that we have better.
Okay.
And when the new things come along, I can get sparked up real quick on ideas on how to enhance them, make them better, improve them. But I don't know how to answer that very well.
Okay. Well, and I can't tell you how to fix things that break. So we're in a good place. We work well together.
Yeah.
Thanks for dropping in today. And I know you made time to come over to this office. We strategically located this office a mile?
It's probably less than a mile.
Less than a mile from your other headquarters. So
Yeah.
we are just a quick 3-minute car ride in either direction, and
Two traffic lights.
We are 2 traffic lights away
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
one another. So anyway, you rock. Thanks, man.
Later.